CTV. Yes, nuggets of inspiration and delightful treats for your enjoyment. Whether you love power, money, beauty, or fame, there is so much to learn from Master of the Game. Only in the place to be. The coolest channel, CTV. Welcome to Master of the Game, the program on which we bring you the movers, the shakers, the icons, and the legends of our beloved motherland, Ghana. The name is Dakwa, Kwesi Che Dakwa, and today I am very happy to have with me the youngest pupil in every class of her life, the youngest student in every class of her life, a lawyer, a politician, and a special aide to former President of Ghana, now President-elect John Dramani Mahama. I'm so happy to have with me and for you today, Mrs. Joyce Bawah Mogtari.
Good morning, sir.
Good.
Having me. Good
you
morning.
Look adorable in your outfit.
Good morning. Thank you. Carefully selected right here. I know enough not to lose guard at all.
We're happy to have you. You always have a smooth voice, but you sound tired already today.
Very tired.
What's it from?
Tired. Well, it's all work, running around, traveling the length and breadth of Ghana, granting just as many interviews, so many arguments, so many debates, you know. There's a lot of mental and physical exhaustion, really. What
exactly does it entail to be a special aide to a former president and now president-elect?
24/7, all the time. You're always on call. There's always someone needing your attention. There's always something to pay attention to. There's just always something to do. To be honest, I quite never stop working. I think that is actually the best part. And don't forget, it's not a job that has no terms of reference. You are your boss's public relations officer. You are his legal advisor. You are his steward. You are his tea, coffee, whatever maker. You must stand up for him at all times.
Oh, don't
You're
tell me.
Literally his body double.
Don't tell me you have to make the tea. You can trust somebody to make the tea. Let's put
Funny
something
enough,
in it.
I do it whenever the other person is not available. And I actually enjoy doing it. You know, there's one thing that I say, that I thank God that I stayed the course. There were times when I actually almost stopped working for John Mahama. But there's just one thing that actually kept me going. Somehow you tend to know JM so well that you believe that this is a guy who really needs you. And I think that actually, it literally sums it up. You know, in all of the conversations, I give glory to God that I also happen humbly to be part of this history. Nothing beats the feeling when I hear people say president-elect. It literally...
Now, something actually beats that feeling when you hear them now say President John Mahama.
I mean, nothing beats, to be very honest with you. I think the last 8 years have been a journey of hope, of faith, and believing that somehow he will certainly receive the validation and vindication.
In my research and talking to some of your colleagues from university and also in the law courts and from the places where you've worked, whether it is consulting for some of the government organizations and being a deputy minister of transport, a key word that has always come up is classy and resilient. Which one will you choose first?
I think a little bit of both. Yes. You know, I tend to be very, very resilient. I take every task given to me very seriously. And it's funny, a few days ago, someone was actually looking for me. And I thought, I stopped working there so many years ago. He said, yes. But that's exactly where I found your number. I went to the IMO website to check. And they still have my details exactly as I left them.
And
the only thing that was different...
You haven't thrown your old chip away?
Funny enough, no. Same number. The only thing was that they got the email address wrong. But that's because over the years, I've stopped using the Yahoo email account and moved on to the iCloud one. But you see, that actually tells you that wherever I've worked, I've left some amazing footprints.
What do you think the closest people who have worked with you, who don't like you, will characterize you as?
Maybe as very bossy.
Bossy?
Very bossy, yes.
What does that mean?
You know, you like to have things done a certain way. You want people to behave a certain way. And a few days ago, I said to Mr. Mahama, think about it. Tell them to stop being sexist and stand up. And I don't like to be bullied. And every man who works with me knows that. And funny enough, I always work with men for some weird reason. I think the most I've had on my teams over the years always men. In the law firm, yes, I had many female colleagues. But since I left the law firm or private institutions, everywhere else, I've had more men on the team than women. In Mr. Mahama's office, funny enough, there's always been just men. Think about it.
How do you deal with sexism?
I think it irritates me, it ticks me like nothing else.
Maybe let me reframe. Do you characterize as sexism?
Trying to tell me what to do and how not to do it.
Yeah, but sometimes I tell men what to do.
Yes, but it's how they,
that's sexism.
And when men do it, women, it's how they do it. I have a colleague of mine who does it all the time. And I think since he joined the team, we fight about that all the time.
Is it a condescending manner?
It's sometimes very patronizing, maybe more than condescending. So you're all having a conversation, you want to tell me when to hush and when not to. I think that's wrong.
Now, when to hush is rude, but don't you think a lot of times we tend to be protective of women, and maybe women may misconstrue that protection for condescension?
I know when a man is being patronizing. I can tell. I've lived it. I know.
You must write a book on condescension from men to women. So
I used to love writing articles on sexual harassment. I think it's somehow metamorphosed into this new conversation. But I know some men are like that. But to be honest, I've had amazing men too.
You bring up a very interesting buzzword, sexual harassment.
Yes.
So I can't help but go there for a minute. A few females, unfortunately, on the social media, describe sexual harassment as approaching a woman who doesn't really find you attractive. Because when a man approaches you and you find them attractive, the very thing you consider sexual harassment from the men you do not find attractive, you find acceptable. What do you say to that?
KKD, the rules have changed over the years. I think even in definition, it's changed over the years. Currently, there's something going on. I think it also pitches men against women. In the past, you'd see a woman you work with daily. Oh, I love your shoes, I love your outfit. It's very normal. There's little subtle ways in which men and women relate. Recently, my husband said something very interesting. I don't like to be in the lift with my female colleagues. If there's just me and a lady, I stay back.
You don't know what they'll say.
Thank you.
Unless there's CCTV.
Excellent. So you see,
which really helped save my life. CCTV.
Absolutely. So the game has changed from what it used to be. I think these days there's a lot of also consciousness, and people are more, very quick really to criticize the way they relate. But I also think that it puts a lot of fetters also on how we interact with our men folk. And maybe you need to achieve a certain balance. I remember in 2016 when we lost, a very good friend of mine met me and said, "Oh, JB, you've actually become the face of the failure of our government."
Oh, no.
Oh, yes. And he was very, very bold about it.
A man said
that, yes.
If a woman said it, would it be a bit more painful?
A woman would probably say it in a very soft way.
No,
yes.
Women are more harsh.
In my life, I think most of the women I've met, majority of them have been very gracious.
I think most of the men I know are generally more tender towards women.
It depends. In politics, there's a lot of competition. It's very keen. Sometimes we even forget about the dichotomies between men and women. And so you find that on that space, we're very equal. It's a very even keel. And I've had colleagues who would say, "Oh, there's nothing feminine about you. You're so tough. Maybe forget you're a woman." So yes, you get a lot of that. But I think in all of that, sisters have to learn to navigate very carefully. I tell women all the time, to succeed, you need a few things about men too. Don't take too many things to heart. I might feel very bad about something. I might take something very personally. But there's one thing I don't do, to cut off or do a car, like we call it. No. If a man does something to me that I don't like, I probably will take you on immediately. And then that's it. I'll see you the next day, and I'm still polite. I'll say hello. I think that's about it. Maybe too, it comes from having so many sisters and just one brother.
How many sisters?
There's 5 other sisters and then one brother.
And you're number
3.
Number 3.
That also speaks to my personality.
Well, I've always wanted to ask you this question. What exactly is the construct that led you to maintain your father's name in your full name today? Because I see a good number of people married, they take on the husband's name, and then the father's name is lost forever. I remember my father telling 2 of my younger sisters, Adiza and Hawa, that you will have to maintain the Dakwa in your name, even when you add your father's name. But when you add your husband's name, why did you choose to maintain Bawah, which is your father's name?
I think mine was probably...
Even when you had the adorable Mogtari.
I think for me, for many years, really, I wanted to maintain my maiden name. And even now, there are times when I still think, maybe I should just revert to my maiden name.
No. You're married, happily married.
But
happily married.
There's actually no legislation or regulation that actually dictates that you should keep your husband's name or even take it. I think it's just a custom that has developed over the years. But you know, for me personally, I think Daddy played an enormous role in everything that I am today. Unfortunately, he didn't live long enough to see all of us get to this level. I think just when I finished law school. Yes, and so...
when you finished law school, how many years ago was this?
Probably about 22 years now.
Oh.
Yes. And so I take that, in fact, 24 years. I left law school in 2000, October. My dad passed a few months later in December of 2002. So that should tell you that 2 years down the line, I think I owe him that. And I love the fact that people see me now and think, oh, you know, you remind me so much of him. Imagine that you didn't have the name that you probably had lost, and he was John. So having Joyce somehow was actually testament also to how he felt when I was born, and that he wasn't bound by the dictates of you have to have a son. And I tell all the time that I'm also very masculine in my outlook, because Daddy actually thought that my daughters were just as good as my sons would be eventually. And so I think... How
many daughters of yours?
I have just 2 daughters and 2 sons. I'm lucky. I have a good balance. But my son is 18 today, and I had him alone for nearly until 4 years ago. Yes. So he still tells
When we come back, more from Joyce Bawah Mogtari, the lawyer, the politician described as classy and sometimes troublesome.
Very troublesome.
So when we come back, we'll be talking about the family she's from and the family she has made, and then we'll talk about her career over the years, right after this. Yes, our special guest this Monday on Master of the Game is Joyce Bawah Mogtari, Esquire, special aide to the former president of Ghana and now the president-elect, His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. She's a lawyer, politician, Ghana's former deputy minister of transport, former consultant for KPMG and the Venture Capital Trust Fund, and an experienced local and international mediator. Joyce Bawah Mogtari, only on Master of the Game, hosted by a Master of the Game, His Royal Blackness King Kwesi J. Love, power, money, beauty, or fame, there is much to learn from Master of the Game, 10 a.m. to 12 midday. Master of the Game, only on CTV and the Class Media Network. Also streaming on Class 91.3 FM and on Facebook and YouTube at MyCTVGH.
Somebody like Azuma Nelson is giving me an advice on boxing. I'll take it.
The reason she doesn't want to ask, maybe she feels like it's too early. Maybe she knows the right thing and she's still complaining.
Apart from business or any other thing, I don't see what she is in yours.
Talking to me when you have children,
go be with that young guy.
Ladies of late know they like the
man and the wife alone.
CTV, Ghana's #1.
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah. Order for meeting at the evangelist Pemuka from 7 days. Aya Kasafoni CTV Awoshe Mosoi. Aya Nyamibwa Sunday way exactly 12:30 p.m. Echo say exactly 1 o'clock p.m. Yanemo Ebeche Aya Enkwaje Asamti from Adamfo Nefra Unia from Bibiara Wonemno, Kais evangelist Pemuka. Yebeche enkwaji asem nyame nhyira mo omamunye kese omamunye na mufri adomu enko adomu ye wonya kopon nhyira nyina amen.
It's always a pleasure to have a guest in the seat on Master of the Game, and today my guest is Joyce Bawah Mogtari, Mrs. lawyer, politician, special aide to now President-elect John Dramani Mahama. I want to find out, tell me about mom and growing up.
Oh my goodness, are you sure you want to hear this one? You know, mom is still alive, she's 84.
Same age as my mom.
Yes, but I think she's not as strong as your mom, because I saw your mom on her birthday recently when I went to check. Mom is actually going through a very tough period these last few weeks, but I tell people all the time that it's the grace of God and the love of her family that is keeping her. She's done a yeoman's job, because for the last over 21 years, she's been mom and dad, literally.
Oh,
yes,
since that passed away.
And she's actually done a fantastic job of it. I have the responsibility of living with her daily. And so for the last 7 years, she's been literally...
She moved to
my
yours.
everything, yes.
Fantastic.
You know, once she's home, I tell people all the time, it's almost as if I have a security man, I have the FBI, I have MI16, I have everything.
You have a gossip partner too.
Straight. And I have someone who tells me, oh, I don't like this. Maybe I don't like this outfit. Or maybe you look good.
Is she able to tell you when a sneaky friend is around?
I really don't do that many friends. You know, when you come from a large family, you find that your siblings are actually your friends. And we meet like literally almost every Sunday with the siblings who talk to each other like every other day.
There's a sister of yours who was in the public eye who I adore.
Yes,
Otiko.
my elder sister.
She's another fierce one.
Absolutely. And she's cast more in my mother's mold.
Whoa.
Yes, very much like
Mother is the warrior in the family?
Oh, my mom is a strong woman. Yes. Right from her day. And I believe that the reason I share this very beautiful history with John Mahama is because of my mother.
How come?
Because my mom actually went to school thanks to JM's father. And so my mother was one of his very favorite nieces. And that is how come John and I are so close.
Fantastic.
Yes. So both of them come from Bole. And my mom actually grew up in ESO most of the time. Even though her own father was a local colonial magistrate, she speaks very highly of her relationship with her paternal uncle that was a late E.A. Mahama.
Fantastic. Yes. Now, I want to know about the family dynamic when dad was alive. Mom is here.
Yes.
Both are working. Yeah. Both are raising children. What was mom doing? What was dad doing?
She's worked all her life, a teacher. She was actually the Northern Region's first female principal of the first women's training college. Yes. And so when she had us, she worked like all her life. My mom retired.
And this was in Bole?
We actually grew up in Tamale. I was born in Tamale.
Oh, you grew up in a big town?
Yes. Well, it wasn't a big town then.
No, it was a big town.
Yeah, just one street. Oh, no, in 73. No, I don't think so. And I went to school a few, minutes away from home, in the home of the late Ariel Lassan, who became a Dubois and his running mate at some point in time. I probably lived on the most prominent street in Tamale. And I think that most of my friends till date are from families who live with us at the time also.
And what did dad do at the time?
Dad himself was a teacher for most of his life. Spent many years in Tamale Secondary School, in the Northern School of Business, in Salaga Secondary School, came to the Ministry of Education.
Do you remember?
Oh, yes. Guess what? Of all subjects, math and geography. For many years growing up, he was our teacher at home.
Mathematics?
Right through mathematics.
That's a subject I never liked.
Oh, yes. And on English and literature, he was amazing. And so when I watch my son gifted in figures, I know where it actually comes from, even though, mind you, his dad is a researcher and a scientist of great and enormous, influence.
He won a big prize in the gene pool.
Yes.
Because when you have a dad who is brilliant, say children actually get their intelligence from the mother, not the father.
Most likely.
But he has it on both sides.
Yes. Our father was a great man on all levels.
Tell me about the siblings. Who was the bully?
I think somehow, who was the bully? Was it me?
You? The third one?
Maybe.
How is it possible?
I don't know. Somehow, I think from the very early years or days, I was always very class prefect-like.
Okay, who's number one?
Number one, maybe my elder sister. And then number two, she's always very subtle and in the middle. And then there's me. And there's number four. She actually was almost like, my mom's favorite, I would say. And I think Daddy's favorite as well.
Any of them in politics and governance?
Funny enough, no. And funny enough, number four really should have gone into politics. Because even as a student in tech, she was very political, contested for Africa or president and did all those kind of things. I think my very early forays into politics started when I went to college in England. I think there was an African Students' Union.
Which college was this?
I was actually at the University of London campus of Holborn College. And so that's when I got very interested in politics. But mind you, home was a hotbed of political activity.
Because I know that in the party,
yes,
there's this thing which I think will become a trend in Ghana, that not all the family must go to one political tradition. You must find ways of ensuring that you're still in the corridors of power, no matter who wins power. So Tico with the MPP.
I disagree vehemently.
And you?
I disagree. You know, I think that my father was a very public-spirited gentleman. And we were all raised on very serious principles of public-spiritedness. I mean, to meet us, it would be a delight. I remember Kwesi Boche of blessed memory meeting us one day at a restaurant, and he couldn't believe that we were all siblings. I mean, we threw a real racket, and the debate that day was about whether John should actually select or nominate a female running mate. He never forgot.
Was Otiko in that discussion?
It was just 5 of us. Unfortunately, Otiko wasn't there.
She was abroad then?
She probably was abroad, I think. It was a fantastic conversation. And that is us. Yesterday, for example, we were all together. After so many months of being on the campaign, we actually met yesterday, and it was brilliant, beautiful. Any conversation, think about it.
So after University of London, Holborn College, what actually did you start doing that set you on the path of politics?
A lot of work, hard work. I also discovered around that time that I had these great leadership skills. I had great communication skills as well. I recognized...
If you may say so yourself.
Yes, in many ways. And then suddenly, I got into this club of friends. I didn't even know that anybody had noticed all the social things that I was doing. And then a conversation with the then U.S. ambassador led me on to the International Visitor Leadership Program in 2008. In the aftermath of that visit, through a friend of mine who is currently a Supreme Court judge in the Gambia, I started to do all sorts of interesting things. And my class 1 teacher will tell you...
Tell me about some of those interesting things.
Yes, I was always one of those students with a lot of imagination. I could write from a very early age. I had this very good flair for words as well. And if I'm miserable, I'll spend the whole day writing. If I'm happy, I'll spend the whole day writing. And if I'm sad, even more so. And if you do something that upsets me, on that day I'll probably have 10 pages. And my mom will tell you that years later, I think when I was actually in practice, she found a notebook of mine. Then she called me, said, Nana, you know, I just found these notebooks of yours. And I could tell her exactly where they were, how I'd labeled all the books. And believe you me, on one of the labels, when I was in Form 3, was to say, I have no doubt that I'll certainly be a fine lawyer. And you know why? The home in which I started primary school, that man lawyer, Alasan, was one of the most prominent lawyers in Tamale at the time. My best friends then too were living next door to lawyer Ibrahim Mahama. The next lawyer was lawyer Bawa Diaka. And so somehow, I think this triangle of families probably is the reason why I decided very early on that this is what I wanted to do.
Were these hands-on mentors or imaginary mentors?
They were always in my home, in and out. Either to share whiskey with
them about the law?
For some reason, I didn't even know what the law was at the time. And then, of course, the Jones Mensah family also moved on to the same street. And he came in as a High Court judge to the Northern Region at the time. And then there was another family, one Justice Ado, who was then in charge of government's contracts. Then guess what? I finished O-level, came out tops, and then a few months later, my neighbor down the street comes home with his wife. I'll never forget. She was so well dressed, like she was everything I couldn't even possibly imagine. And then he said, oh, he's Alaji's wife, Betty Multidrusu. I thought, oh, wow. What does she do?
Oh, Betty was elegant. So, still is.
Thank you. And so I think I was lucky in so many ways. I never lacked coaches. I didn't lack mentors. I didn't lack great examples. But that example must be certainly my parents. Certainly, any day. And I think even though my dad has been dead so many years, my biggest inspiration for wanting to succeed is actually because of Daddy. And I still tell my siblings even now. You know, a few days ago, my sister Clara said to me, oh, you know, I imagine what Daddy would be feeling today if he was here. I said, yes, I look at our kids and I see him more in our kids, in the things they enjoy, sports, math, geography. You know, there's just these very engaging young teenagers, and everybody who encounters them has a story to tell about them.
They say all confidence is actually born of competence.
Yeah,
the more competent you get in whatever field of endeavor you are, you gain your confidence. But it's also true that without the right nourishment and nurturing, people suffer before they build their confidence.
Absolutely.
What made you build your confidence?
I think nurturing. I think nurturing. A lot of love. Teaching amongst ourselves. So we always have to be better than the next one. But more because somehow my father drove that. Because you do that for other people's kids. And so when he came home, we had to be those kids that woke up on time, got to school on time, and everything that he stood for, somehow we had to represent. And even though we had just one brother, and people always thought that my brother would probably be a very...
What's your brother's name?
He's actually John Bawah Jr. But everybody calls him Sheriff. He lives in between Ghana and Canada, and he's here this week actually, came to vote. So I think that in many ways, we must have been great examples.
He flew down to cast his one vote.
Absolutely. And he takes that very seriously.
I had to go to 10 different polling stations to be able to cast my vote.
Well, he actually served the lunch in my own constituency for me.
Fantastic.
Yes. And I think that he's been a great support over the years with our kids, with my mom and everybody. And even though he's our probably last but one, Sheriff has enormous wisdom. And every time and out and I need advice, I'll just pick up a phone and I ask him.
He replaces Dad for you?
In many ways. In many, many ways. I think he's taken that up very, very seriously, very responsible, very hardworking, and very compassionate when it comes to his sisters. And so I think that he's done a very good job.
Let's talk about your first political activity, as you recall.
Oh, my goodness.
What exactly was it?
In Daddy's house, serving all the politicians who were in and out.
That was a political activity, of course.
Absolutely. Great political activity. And I was actually his secretary, don't forget. I used to take all the notes and the minutes.
Whoa.
Yeah. And my dad had the best handwriting you'd ever imagine. And so every time he had a meeting, he would actually ask me to take the minutes. And he wanted to see
Why would he choose you over all the other sisters?
Maybe one, I was older. And honestly, I had a certain proficiency from very early on for language. I would read any material, name it, anything. Anything. I mean, think anything. I noticed every little thing me. I think in many ways I was probably more like him than the others. And then you come back to the point of my imagination too. You know, last year I was in Canada, and then my brother's daughter, my niece, whom I think is very much like me, started to write a story. This is a child living in Canada. But her story started from Damango and all through her life visiting her grandmother through Accra and back to Canada. You know, as I sat there looking at what Myra had put on that paper, I couldn't help but think, oh my goodness, that's Joyce all over again. You know, KKD, I am enormously humbled as a daughter of third-generation Northern parents that maybe for whatever reason, they shouldn't even have been educated. Think about it.
No, but they had to be educated because don't forget, Kwame Nkrumah had a clear policy to ensure that there was free education up north.
But in our homes, it was totally different. You know, my father only went to school because everybody thought he was. And he told us years later about the Catholic priest who lived in the same village. And then one time he just walked into my great-grandfather's compound. Indeed, my great-grandfather told him that princes didn't go to school because at school they were forced to be disciplined and told to do stuff they didn't want to do. But of course, when they came in and asked him, and literally pointed at my father standing in the compound probably with almost no clothes on his back, my grandfather thought, oh, but why would you want to take him to school? Princes don't go to school. They're supposed to stay at home and be groomed by us. So it is just by some miracle, really, that my father went to school. And it wasn't such an easy route like we actually had. You know, for many years, he went to college, and then he was a teacher for many years, and then before he came to Legon. So I think he got to Legon maybe in the 50s, when food was free, accommodation was free, even transport to come to Legon was free. And then you leave and jobs are readily available. And so I must confess that there must have been a certain history to all of them. My mother, same. Indeed, my mother passed to go to St. Monica's, and yet they refused to take her because they said she was so well developed that someone would probably want to marry her instead of allowing her to go to school. She persevered. And so I think that in many ways, we are products of the nurturing. And you know, my sister Emma is a banker. I always say that qualitatively, she probably was the most scientific of all of us. And I watch how we've all progressed over the years. Clara is a certified, visa consultant. I mean, Sharif is an extraordinary businessman. You know, all of us somehow have a little bit of both parents. But I think all in all, we work so damn hard.
More on Master of the Game when we come right back to chat with the one and only Joyce Bawah Mogtari right after this.
Your election stronghold is here again with the most comprehensive election coverage.
A moment to choose between reset, upgrade, and the others. We are your trusted source to give you a comprehensive coverage.
And Class Media Group is your most reliable and trusted source to give you the best analysis.
We've put together a strong team of reporters across all constituencies to bring you the breaking news.
Experienced presenters for all the unbiased in-studio discussions with very knowledgeable experts.
Police stations are hot. Our Ghana for Nana. Yebenya Mure, near Sonny Sokotin, I'm a muati, near the Somo.
And the anybody about one chi na near Bepio about one Mubiano, Yamamu.
Kayaho, our 100.5 FM, Class 91.3 FM. CTV, Ghana's #1 television, and our classfmonline.com. Your affiliate stations are working in which your Ghana have a piano or Sabakaye.
About one bread. Some who about to know Susanswa. For full of Class Media Group, your election strong.
Hello, Ghana. My name is Kwesi Dakwa, and I'm delighted to tell you a beautiful story. For every young person in Ghana looking to work in radio, television, or online, this is a great opportunity. You're on Master of the Game, the program that brings you the movers, shakers, icons, and legends of our beloved motherland Ghana. We're streaming live on Facebook at MyCTVGH and Accra 100.5 FM, as well as Class 91.3 FM. We're also streaming live on YouTube at MyCTVGH. Go there, like, subscribe, comment, and share. With me is my special guest, Mrs. Joyce Bawah Mogtari. My next question. Politics. Should it always be partisan and cantankerous?
That's a tough one. Let me navigate this one very carefully. It really shouldn't be cantankerous. And it shouldn't always be very partisan. And it should also be a way that you speak as a way of what you believe in. You know, I always say that for the last probably 10 years, since I've been spokesperson and special aid, I'm probably one of the few who had any court suits or legal suits or anything because I've said something or probably told a white lie or a barefaced lie or said something that wasn't factually correct.
Because maybe you say it with more wit than belligerence.
No, because I say what I believe in. Like coming here this morning.
What you believe in and be belligerent.
Yes, but I'm coming here this morning, for example. I say a very short prayer. That whatever I say, however I say it, should actually be with a sense of sincerity to give somebody hope and to encourage somebody. So I don't take any responsibility lightly. Because it could be any other person. It doesn't even have to be me. And so I take it also with all humility. That even my conversation with you here should actually be my sincerity. No need to exaggerate, to say what doesn't exist. I'll parry a few things because I probably don't want to answer in a certain way. But that should be about it. I think that there's a certain extent where partisanship is good. But I think too much of it also doesn't help. And you can see that when you look at the result today, it tells you why too much partisanship also actually doesn't help us. I think that that's what it is.
But when you place the nation first, I think it's quite difficult to be partisan. Because partisanship tends to serve party and self before nation. Because essentially, if we are thinking of governance and we're thinking of leadership, and we think we have a better idea, the way to put it across is not to be belligerent nor partisan, but to put it across more persuasively, so that the other person's point is naturally, in our own gentility, rendered either useless or stupid.
That's another way to put it. But I also look at it from another perspective. You see, as politicians, using us all as an example, there are some things that should be about Ghana. You understand? No matter the circumstances. And then there are also those things that will be largely about us personally or our politics, for example. The challenge we have is that we are not able to decipher when it's about politics, when it's about Ghana, or when it is good for the citizenry. You see, talk about the economy. My brother, anyhow you look at it, it must be about Ghana. It can't be about politics. It can't be about business as usual. Talk about health. It can't be.
But when people are being disingenuous, that's not being about Ghana.
Thank you. And we know when we are being disingenuous. Don't forget. Every politician, all of us as politicians know exactly when we are being
But when you're being disingenuous, is it because you're politicians, not you as an individual?
Yes, I know, yeah.
When politicians are being disingenuous, is it because they assume that the electorate is stupid, ignorant, or dumb?
No, I think that they know that the electorate are none of those three words. But they believe that this may actually serve as a sort of personal aggrandizement, that it helps people to elect them other than another person. You know, I think for the first time also in the last few years, we've had more of that because largely, you know, our opponents have always been about themselves. You know, this capitalist thing gives you a certain leverage because it is you talking about all the things that put money in the pockets of a few people that create this, you know, very wealthy class of people that is not so big on the equitable balances that are required. You know, I say for us, humility is also woven into our fabric because naturally our environments are like that. Being cosmopolitan is also something that comes to us naturally because you find that in our case, whether you're Catholic, Protestant, whatever you are, you will definitely have a cousin, a brother or a sister who is probably fully Muslim. You'll grow up with them. You are naturally bound to have friends even from all religious and multi-faith areas. And so whether you like it or not, your consciousness of the fact that we are all different starts from a very early age. People's names, for example, you are Hawa, you are Adishetu, you are Memuna. We're used to it. But you also know that your father probably left home being called Ewuntoma. You ask him, but why Ewuntoma? He says, oh, he was named after the namesake of another chief. Who is this chief? He probably doesn't even know. So he knows that Ewuntoma is just that. You're a prince. You must be named after some powerful chief or the other. But he goes to school and he's told, look, to have a name that people can pronounce, that they can spell, that they can relate to. Exactly. It's helpful. So he picks a name. And what is the name? John the Baptist. So the name is John. You ask him why John, he probably can't even explain that to you. But then he rhymes well with Bawah. And so he keeps it. So you know, we come into this life knowing very well that you have all the odds against you. So beyond the partisanship, beyond the politics, beyond all of that, you will find that we are very well acclimatized in all situations. You know, it's okay to want to be persuasive. The question is, how persuasive can you be?
But you cannot be persuasive with a false argument.
Oh, you can.
Then you are persuading idiots.
Oh, but you can. Even when you're not persuading idiots, you can.
How do you persuade people with a false argument?
Oh, very easily. Because you see, you tell them stuff that you know they don't believe, but you're telling them. And it's because we have all this media hype also. So even while the people don't believe you, for example, I remember at the peak of this very difficult electioneering campaign, for example, fact-checking became the order of the day. And so we have our then candidate on the other side at a large gathering of students, for example, and then talks about allowances. A student asked the fact that the allowances had not been received for a while.
Fact-check live.
Great. In the same breath, he tells them that he has ordered the finance minister to make the funds available. You see, it was a little innocuous thing maybe in the scheme of things.
That was not persuasive.
It was.
No, it wasn't.
Because you know that what you're saying is not borne by the facts or is not supported by the facts. But you are still brazen enough to say it.
Just because you're brazen enough to say it does not make it persuasive.
Oh, in a way it does.
If I tell people that watching TV today, seated to my right, is Joyce Bawah Mogtari in a bright red dress, no matter how beautifully I say it, it cannot be persuasive. But
they will believe that your socks are red, that maybe you're
that's what I'm saying. So really, why do politicians have to lie?
But that's what I'm saying. Look, in many ways, okay, I think that for the very first time, credibility, sincerity, truth, now suddenly means something different to all of us. I remember times when we would go, for example, when we spoke about the large size of government, which was something many Ghanaians had actually spoken about. And then Mr. Mahama then said, okay, I'm going to really realign these government agencies and ministries. I'll try as much as possible to run this government with 60 ministers. The next morning, what does his opponent say? I'll do 50. But you see, he thought that he was actually a sitting vice president at a seat of government where you have over 120 and counting.
Let me bring you to a point that His Excellency President John Agyekum Kufuor told me on his 86th birthday. I went to visit and pay my respects, and he had me sit by his side, and we had a conversation. He says, Christine, I'm saying, what kasapa? And I'm saying, opinion. He's a father to me.
Okay.
I said, opinion, kasa de ne was se me kasa. Na bibi ebe tobia emfa me ho. He said, ni ane ekoso ne nye. That's Kwesi tiasi ese. Menya kura nanka vice president anka yetwem. If he say yes, if he say ye president, vice president only to me biara. Ni adwuma president de be man no eno koye. Until say minister our portfolio. Enti vice president ne de sabe oye president na sumafo. Enti say the vice president isi won ye bo ho ka no. Anka nipa no so wonim de bi edidi minister bi momo a anka beboa. And I'm saying nasa wo na wo vice president. I say kwesi na me wo bi. Enu nti na mehu. Ese nioma bi wo ma wamfemu a wonhu. Enti se bibia ekoso bia no. Vice president ka ban no ho de. But oni hu to me. Ese president anyone a oni wo mo dwen efa adwen wia. Opa no tie vice president. And in English, it says, look, when somebody is vice president in Ghana, he has no power. He only does the bidding of the president. And knowing that I have been president before, I can tell you, in all fairness, that maybe we should abolish the position of vice president, because the vice president makes no policy whatsoever. Whatever he does is at the pleasure of the president. What do you say to that?
I disagree completely. For three reasons. The 1992 Constitution, for example, posits very clearly that the qualifications of a vice president should actually be exactly the same as the president.
But he has no power over policy.
The reason is simple. The reason why we need a vice president, that in the event that the president is incapacitated, the president is disabled, the president unfortunately probably dies in office, or the president is unable to carry out his legally duties as president, then by all means the next person to be sworn in to take over will be His Excellency the Vice President. This is the order of the Constitution as we speak.
Is it an order that helps save the public? Essentially, we're putting somebody in a position of authority where they lack the authority. We're putting somebody there who is essentially a messenger of the president, has no portfolio whatsoever. And if the president determines not to use the person for any work, they just hang in there. Just because we think if the president dies, somebody must take over.
It's very important that we don't have a rudderless country under these circumstances. The framers of the Constitution, and you can see that the world over, this is not just Ghana as an example.
But the world over, the majority may be wrong.
No. Sometimes the majority is right. And the framers of the Constitution must have known that there are other situations where a president may or may not be able to undertake his presidential duties. And you see, we suffered it.
The Speaker of Parliament can do it if we determine that that's what we want.
The Speaker of Parliament is the Speaker of Parliament. And remember, in the absence of the president, in the absence of the vice president, the Speaker actually
is sworn
to act for the same reason. And remember, the qualifications of the Speaker are also of a very high level. Not just anybody.
Isn't that more reason why we don't need a vice president?
We do. And the next thing is that I completely disagree still with our father, President Kufuor, for the simple reason. Why then will a vice president want to succeed his boss? Try to campaign on whatever is right about his boss's policies. Why then will we put so much premium on the value of a vice presidential candidate campaigning in support of his boss, who is actually hoping to become a future president? Why will we put so much premium on the campaign of a vice president that seeks in many ways either to agree with what the president does or disagree, all because you need to navigate to stand well in the middle? As an addendum to what President Kufuor told you, vice presidents ought to be banned from contesting to stand as president, especially in the pendency of the boss's presidency. Maybe that's another conversation we can have. And of course, this is all wide open
these are all conversations we must have moving forward.
Exactly.
Because people, there are many lawyers I've spoken to who say the Constitution is not extinct, but it needs quite a number of modifications.
But every Ghanaian agrees with that assertion.
And I want to come to another point in the Constitution. The Council of State. If I had a corporate entity where I had appointed a body from whom I take advice, but it is also written as part of the constitution of that body that whatever advice they give me, I take at my pleasure. I'm not obliged to take it. For the purpose of saving the public funds, I would abolish that construct. Council of State. If a Council of State has seen the water bodies being destroyed, has seen forest areas being messed up for the plunder of gold by people who are actually in power, and the voice of the Council of State counts for nothing, why do we still pay them so much, keep them at post, and give them all the perquisites we give them? Does it make sense?
Let me try to answer this in two ways, because there are many schools of thought, and I think the jury is still out on exactly what the role of the Council of State actually is. But I'll take it from the framers of the 1992 Constitution. Remember that at the time this Constitution was actually...
if I may, with your kind permission, I'd like to interrupt. I don't belong to the school of thought that assumes that every elder of ours was wise. We have a few foolish elders too. So to quote that the framers of the Constitution give gravitas doesn't work with me. And I believe at this point in time, it doesn't work with Gen Z,
but note that,
the young ones.
Note that the framers at the time were not necessarily older people.
Yeah, but whoever they were.
The people drawn from
so quoting them gives them a certain clothing of authority.
They were drawn from all walks of life. At the time, Ghana was coming out of many military coup d'etats. We had strong man, late President Jerry John Rawlings, in office. What do you think was the best way to try and reduce the powers that he had or the level of authority that he had?
But they didn't reduce it.
No, don't worry. But I'm trying to go into the minds of the members of the Constituent Assembly.
They rather drew up a constitution to protect President Rawlings.
No, maybe also to allow for people to knock on his door in the mornings and say, we are here as Council of Elders. We need to bring your attention to ABS.
Let's give people real jobs to do.
Don't worry,
stop these advisory roles where we pay them so much for doing nothing.
On a more serious note, and this is not because I'm special aid to John. This is just my very professional perspective, that we've come of age. And I've heard many proponents for the amendment and review of the current constitution also speak about some of these bodies of whose relevance people struggle even to recognize. Okay? I think the time is ripe. I think that this overwhelming endorsement is also a great opportunity for us all to engage in these conversations constructively, to work to review where necessary. And note that, with Gen Zs, and I use all our kids as an example, they are not very big on authority. Because you see, my son will tell Mommy, I can sit in my room and start a business now, so do well. Why not? You understand?
True.
So in terms of reporting lines, the lines aren't so clear.
They're blurred.
Absolutely. As a young child, I remember my mom always say, oh, you like to argue too much. Because I'll argue about everything. I'll question anything mom said. I know that even now, there are some adult people that when I deal with, don't get that thing. But you see, there's one thing about me. I'll argue with your position. Maybe I'll disagree vehemently. But know that when I get home, in my quiet time, I'll think about it very carefully. And once I reflect on it, and I deem that your position was right, I'll come back. And I'll say, okay, I've thought about this, I've thought about that, etc. But you see, one thing we should not do, let's be sure never to stop the voices of dissent, even if it's just one voice, and it dissents.
Well, my voice was stopped by being banned from speaking on the GBC.
But why?
What will your government do about it?
You see, that's the beauty of our government. You see, you look at it
for saying that somebody takes us borrowing after they have said, now you take us borrowing so much. And it's not just some person in the streets taking us borrowing, but the Minister of Finance. Yeah. Only for me to spend 3 days reading documents this thick to find that for every borrowing we make, he makes a profit. Yeah. So it's like you having a fufu chop bar. You appointing somebody the CEO of the fufu chop bar. Yeah. And then he appointing somebody to pound the fufu. And then now he appoints the person who pounds the fufu. That every time the mortar cracks, you supply the mortar. So they be over pie would do.
These are some of the very regrettable things about the last administration. And even though we tend to criticize all these things all the time, there's one thing that I also believe Mr. Mahama has been saying. It is time also for Parliament now to be given more powers, right? We need a certain fiscal regulation in place to put a fetter on unbridled borrowing, for example. This constitution leaves all these things at the discretion. And so when you bring into government as a finance minister, a man that all of us were told was the most finance person, okay? Ran his own personal investment bank for so many years, And then today he's finance minister. We also know about the familial connection that they have. And so naturally, if he were to advise His Excellency the President, how do you think he'll take it? He'll believe that it's also in his interest. He will acquiesce that maybe this guy knows better. He will admit. But you see, the challenge is when they start to go wayward, when they go rogue, when they start to believe in themselves so much. And this is where your question about partisanship comes in. Too much partisanship. A few days ago, our own former finance minister, for example, was on radio, made some very personal comments, and everybody was up in arms. They may have been his own very personal views because he even used his own family, his kids, as an example. I believe the similar sentiments were shared even by this finance minister that we're talking about. But you see, all in all, my brother, let we appoint persons who have a certain level of integrity. Because it is only that personal level of integrity that allows a person, given all these powers, to know just when to put a stop to it.
But all men are works in progress.
Exactly.
So what you see as integrity today may change as soon as power is handed to them. Because as they say, power corrupts. And absolute power corrupts. Absolutely. Including President-elect John Dramani Mahama.
But you see, the interesting thing is that the personal qualities of that individuals also differ. I think when you look at President Mahama, you look at President Kufuor, you look at former President Jerry John Rawlings, take late Professor John Evans Atta Mills, take now President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo. Look at the personalities. They are very different individuals. There's one thing I would say about President Akufo-Addo, that he's a man who is very personable. It's actually one of his most lasting qualities. He would see you on Monday and remember you for the rest of his life. That's his nature. The other side to him is that he believes in his authority, so much so that it is not easy to even try to put a fetter on that authority. And then I believe that he also stayed the course for so many years. And so by the time we actually went out there to have Ghanaians elected, it was almost as if this was a given. And so once he finally got that power, I think that to his own credit, he struggled with how to use it.
We will come back with Joyce Bawah Mogtari, and I'll read to her something she posted many years ago. Very, very interesting material. But it's important for me to end this part of the interview before going into the next, where she reacts that power itself is fleeting. Fame is vapor. And people remember that the ultimate power is truth. If you're not speaking the truth, you are absolutely powerless. More on Master of the Game right after this. Hello Ghana, my name is Dakwa, Kwesi Dakwa, and I'm delighted to tell you a beautiful story. For every young person in Ghana looking to work in radio, television or online, this is a great opportunity for you. Welcome to Class Media Group. Class Media Group, with one TV station, 9 radio stations throughout the country, and one great online portal, is taking on new hires as interns. Interns to shadow great personalities and train for a job and career ahead. All you have to do is apply to this below. This goes straight to our head of human capital and culture. Whether you want to work in radio production, radio presenting, television production, television presenting, or working to write and post online, Class Media Group is the place to be. This is KKD. See you soon.
Hello, it's a whole brand new season of the Siudine TV show. My name is Odansini Odilia. We come your way this and every Thursday from 5 to 5:30 p.m. This new season, we are looking at solving issues concerning properties. So if you have bought a land and you are having issues, you bought a house, or you have any litigation issue concerning any property, come to us. And we are looking to sell properties on this very show. So if you are looking to buy a land, a house, or even to rent an apartment or a house, this is the show you have to watch. My name remains Odansini Odilia. Watch us this and every Thursday, 5 to 5:30 p.m. only on CTV.
CTV, Ghana's #1.
party time, it's party time. On what you say, Ola Bawo. As I introduce to you, Safari Zoom Flex live on Ghana's #1. With Zoom Flex, you can join the fun wherever you find yourself via Zoomer. Ella, don't shake the body. God, it's Friday. Of course, time is 10 p.m. Sharp on Ghana's #1 with the man them DJ Last Week Official. We say, Ola Bawo.
CTV, Ghana's #1.
Your election stronghold is here again with the most comprehensive election coverage.
A moment to choose between research, upgrade, and the others. We are your trusted source to give you a comprehensive coverage.
And Class Media Group is your most reliable and trusted source to give you the best analysis.
We've put together a strong team of reporters across all constituencies to bring you the breaking news.
Experienced presenters for all the unbiased in-studio discussions with very knowledgeable experts.
Ababia yebenya ebefi polling stations ahodwa ewa Ghana for na yebenya mre ni asone so krojen amemu ate ni ye dia somo
anti ye di anibedi abato n'echi na ne ebepie wa abato no mu bia no yamamwe hunu
Kaye ho ewa kra 100.5 FM.
Oh, I got a text from a friend of mine who says, oh my God, I love this woman. Well, she's happily married. Says she reminds me of something that I was taught in school. You see, you were my classmate, so remember it too. You remember the he who knows not. Can you tell us all on TV? Of course. He who knows not and knows not, he knows not. He's a fool.
I know. Straight.
He who knows not and knows he knows not.
Yes.
He's asleep. Wake him.
Wake him.
He who knows and knows not, he knows. He's a child. Teach him.
Yes.
But he who knows and knows he knows is a teacher or a leader. Follow him. Well, those are very kind words for you. Somebody thinks you have it in you to be a leader.
Too kind, too kind, too kind.
Do you like the leadership role? You were Deputy Minister for Transport. You have been aide to the former president in opposition, an aide to him now getting into government. Do you like being in a leadership role?
You know, I think I've always been in a leadership role. I think right from my mom's kitchen, really. And so I think that in some many ways, being in the public space has actually also given me this level of leverage. But I don't know, I've never thought beyond where I'm seated. I think for the last 8 years, I had only one ambition: to help John Mahama succeed. Don't forget, I take risk. I used to think that I'd leave my job at a certain point and go to the bench. I remember the former Chief Justice, Justice Judith Wood, for example, when I was first made a deputy minister, she was actually very upset and actually took Mr. Mahama on one day at church because she always thought that I'd one day join her on the bench. In many ways, I think that God still works in the affairs of men. I came into politics, I didn't even know what to expect. I made the very best out of it. It wasn't always easy, but you see, when you have a certain strength of character, when you have a certain level of knowledge, when you try very hard to be the best of you in every situation, it is very easy to shine. Maybe even in some circumstances, you have no terms of reference. But you see, you literally make the best out of it. I mean, ask yourself today, who wouldn't want to be a special aide even to a former president? Who wouldn't want to be a spokesperson even to a former president? Because a niche for yourself that makes it so attractive that everybody will want that job that you have. It actually even breeds some competition even towards you, because proximity also breeds a lot of enmity. And so never take it lightly, that when you are handed a responsibility, take it and make the very best out of it.
Is access to power in itself?
You know, even without access to power, just a certain sense of being even around power. And like I said, I came into this space when Mr. Mahama had lost completely. There really was no power, nothing to speak of save to defend.
But he still had his cachet. He was still getting appointed to go and observe elections. He was still paid a handsome salary by the people of Ghana.
But remember that in many ways, he was actually looking forward to his second term.
And his aides were also remunerated for their time.
So that our time and that kind of money, I'll show it to you when I leave here. Wouldn't help us at all.
And
if you're not even my office rent. It's actually very tough on that score. But you see, make no mistake, a human being's personality also comes to bear on whatever role that they are given.
You have it in you to be a broadcaster. You know about the art of modulating your voice.
You know, I advertised for a job once. I'm sure people at GBC probably don't remember. They told me I was reading too fast.
I was told I talked too fast when I started work at GBC.
Exactly.
So I was taught to speak slowly.
Good. So I actually took one of those courses for quite about 6 weeks. Then afterwards, I just thought the attention was too much. I also realized that that sort of TV wasn't for me. And so I decided to put that one down there and go and do other things.
So now if you're ready to rock real steady, please come with me as we get the reactions of Mrs. Joyce Bawah to some of the things on social media, starting with one that she posted herself, and it reads, "Years ago, some close associates and friends used a viral song's lyrics to troll me on social media. However, I'm not familiar with local lyrics and prefer reading books. My real friends know this about me. Recently, a friend shared a similar experience where she unknowingly commented on a post that was actually directed at her. Despite some experiences, I believe social media is a powerful tool with numerous benefits. It allows for real-time information sharing, keeping up with global connections, and marketing my political party and candidate, John Mahama. Social media also helps correct misinformation and whip up public sentiment around important issues. While social media has its downsides, it has advantages, such as building trust, confidence, and connections. John Mahama effectively utilized social media to connect with his constituency and share updates. I learned from him and developed a strong online community. I encourage everyone to use social media wisely and effectively to build social currency, become thought leaders, and shape public opinion. Happy weekend, and may June be a good month. Actor, non-verbal."
Yes.
Your reaction to this, many years on?
I'm even confused. You know, it's true. My tree is very bad. But yes, you know, people do these things all the time. And sometimes unknowingly, people living very close to you. And when you actually spend so much time being close to a coveted leader, understandably, your proximity can harm others too. But I've always maintained that even long before today, I remember when we were in office, there was a day when I actually wished someone happy birthday. A colleague of mine called me and said, "Oh, but why are you wishing happy birthday at 8 a.m. in the morning? You know, people will think you're not too busy, that you don't have anything to do." In fact, that gentleman today probably uses social media even more than I do. Okay? Secondly, I love to write. You know, when I became a deputy minister, one of the things I missed about my old job was my training programs. And so what other way to vent that energy than to take my writing to social media? And I would write about anything that actually took my fancy. And so you actually get a whole number of people who follow you just for that. But remember, I also had people who would try to troll you with all sorts of reasons. You know, you pass a flippant comment here and suddenly it's so important to other people. And I remember this song was won by Black Sheriff, Kweku Frimpong or something, the Assembeba. No, it didn't mean anything. Like when Oman started using the word Jack Toronto, I had no idea it was actually, you know, I'm one of those people. And so I pick up these things as I go along. But you know, in all of that, I think that we should use social media and use it effectively.
Well, somebody made a comment about you. This was at a funeral, actually, when I told them that I was going to bring you on as a guest.
Yeah.
And he says, and your ex-wife are down for. I'm like, baby, my ex-wife, one more age group, but my name so many are down for.
Oh, she's actually my sister and my friend.
And then?
And we chat like all the time.
And then it goes like, now they're about we join the crowd, when they're down for you find them say, now if you have a child or children with somebody, you're friends for life.
Absolutely.
It will never change.
Yes.
But the comment he made, which I want to bring up to your notice is, hey, so bandit, meaning that woman has the, you know, like...
Oh, I'm not that bad.
So many harsh words, and if you say anything, she will clap back.
No, I'm not bad. You know, look.
You're not that bad.
We have to
Quite bad,
we
not
have
that
to
bad.
learn. There's a lot of misogyny. There's a lot of sexism. If you don't stand up and stand firm, I'm telling you, I know what I'm talking about. I've lived it. Men just have a tendency.
What's the worst somebody has come, you know, to you with on social media?
Oh, plenty. Plenty.
Unprintable words?
Oh, loads of them. All kinds of them. Oh, all kinds of them. Plenty.
And when you get really riled up, what do you do?
Oh, two things. I'll take up to X and deliver in spades in response. Or I'll write like a long, lengthy article. Yes.
So that's the way you vent your spleen?
Oh, yes. I like to write a lot. I mean, for years. I mean, I still keep a journal. There's nothing that I forget. KKD, dates, time. Every little spiteful thing that's been said to me, done to me, name it.
My team did so much research on you.
I never forget.
So much research on you.
I never forget.
Your friends, your enemies. In fact, if you want to know who wants to harm you, you need to talk to the class media research team. When the FBI put together.
I will.
But now let's go to this and get your comment.
How come everything else is consistent? And the vote has been swapped on this. And what the EC is having a different number. What you have, please, what you have is written in ink, but this is a duplicate. Let's look at the handwriting, please. No, we will finish. You have all the field day. Please, let's check the handwriting. One other thing that you can use to check is handwriting. And two scenarios may happen. The scenario that may happen is that the handwriting is different. If the handwriting is different, then somebody sat down and wrote it a different sheet in ink on a different pink sheet and just swap the votes. If the handwriting is the same, then it means that we found the culprit. The culprit who did it is the same officer who filled the sheets and change the votes. And so I want everybody, media, cameramen, if you are here, you can bring your camera. Then we all check the handwriting. So you put your this thing down. And let's look at it. Yes. No.
Oh my, these elections. I spoke with a professor who I admire very much, Professor Ransford Champo, a few days ago, and he had a few things to say about how the EC delayed in naming the elections. He thinks they did well conducting the elections. They were not perfect, but looking at this, what comes to mind?
Oh, there were, you know, a lot of that, unfortunately, regrettably. You know, I have been closely associated with these elections, maybe for the last 3 cycles, okay? I've also followed very closely on what we have done over the years to improve upon our whole outlook on elections, on collation, on training, just improving everything really so we can meet the Electoral Commission at least halfway. I've also come to the realization that even though we are told all the time that the EC cannot procure results for you, that the EC cannot intervene in results coming your way. I think also that by their actions, inactions, or their omissions, for example, they can create a certain hotbed that allows for all sorts of things to happen, even in the persons they appoint sometimes to man the polling stations. Let me give you a good example. That in Domikwa, for example, on election day, when they were bringing the election material to the polling station, there was a gentleman in one of the vehicles, okay, purportedly a staff or official of the EC. And guess what inscription was on his cap? Honorable Mike Okwe.
You're joking?
Yeah, seriously.
Wearing party and candidate paraphernalia.
Straight.
On election day?
And making no bones about it. That's one. Secondly, go to Adenta. And this was in 2020. So they scream at the time of collation or counting of ballots. 365. Okay? And then the next thing you hear, 635. So if you're not sharp, you're not quick, you have a problem. It is a reason why this time we insisted that the results at each polling station should be pasted on the wall as CI 127 dictates. In the past, it wasn't like that. And you heard Dr. Tukono speak about the handwriting. So you write in words, you write in figures. In most of the past elections, you'll find that most people don't even sign off, thanks to intimidation. Look, it is not just the ballot stuffing or the printing of the extra ballot papers. It is also the intimidatory tactics that will prevent voters, for example, from doing what they're expected to do, from doing the right thing, for example, from filling out the forms that they are expected to. Recently, at this just ended election, at Adenta, when they realized that they were losing, seriously, some thugs actually tried to literally lift the ballot boxes and run off with them.
So what did the police do?
The police were very quick, gave them chase, stopped them, and took back the ballot boxes.
And where are those people now?
Well, I'm not sure what happened in the aftermath. I didn't even go back to check, but they were apprehended. I know one of them, for example, was actually processed even for court. I don't know where that is. The next thing also is with the way we handle the whole process. So an old lady, for example, probably about 85 or 86, was at a polling station in a queue. And then they had challenges with her thumbprint. I mean, at that age, you know that sometimes they are depressed. Sometimes you can't even, read the thumbprints and all of that. It was the frustration that she went through. At another place, you'd find the EC officials themselves trying to tell people in the queue whom to vote for. Note that, but for the vigilance of everybody concerned, I'm sure would have had even more challenges.
We have a National Commission for Civic Education. Because they are under-resourced, they're not able to do much to educate people to understand that if somebody tries to tell you who to vote for on election day, you should report them immediately to the policeman and have them arrested.
Whom will you report to? On this occasion, we had people from immigration. I saw them. We had some officers, police officers. In some places, they had other things to pay attention to. In others, they were there and paying attention to the process. But remember that the ratio of police even to citizen is nothing to write home about. So if you know that even still, there are some challenges in some parts of the country. But I think on this occasion, the police actually did a very professional job. And we must commend them. If that will continue, why not? But the biggest commendation must go, of course, to the National Democratic Congress. For the very first time, we all came to a conclusion that vigilance is the watchword, key to everything.
Well, let's be vigilant. Let's be vigilant and see this next video, and I'll take your reaction to this.
MPP4, your breath fertilizer said, Monfa, and yet a Jumamo for Mokia4. Monfa, and yet. Your two about ye, DC, I be chief constituency, DC. Say, if you're the go, say, fan the go, and walk us, sir, trailer back, any trailer back. Well, a man for an archer, no. Your driver, no, and you didn't have press police station. You can't move and can you call police station, you call report to your car assembly, almost all month near my be any trailer number. Aha, a bro, you can't saw me a bro for MP before. Yɛka so ɔmo yɛ akorɔmfo yɛka mo nte aseɛ. Fertilizer nko a o, akuafoɔ de bɛyɛ adwuma.
The fertilizer that should be used for fertilizing the land to grow the crops so we don't have to import tomatoes and onions and pepper and plantain and yam from other countries is locked up in somebody's property, and after the election is being moved somewhere. Why? Why do we do this to ourselves? And this is from the government of Ghana. So be it MPP or NDC, anybody can do it. Why should the Ghanaian citizen believe that this nonsense cannot happen in an NDC government?
You know, look, we were in the Western region, okay? Which is like home to most of our cocoa plantations, rubber plantations, palm plantations, oil, gas, gold, name it. And this is exactly what they needed. Remember that under Mr. Mahama and Professor Mills, for example, fertilizers were given to cocoa farmers for free. In recent times, fertilizer is being sold. And even as it's being sold, it is not even available for you to buy. And then you see a video like this. There's a lot more. It's not just this enough. Remember Mr. Mahama telling every NDC supporter and volunteer, for example, they will bring all sorts of things to induce you, to influence you, to convince you that they're a better option. And as soon as they win, all these things will dry up. They will disappear automatically. But in this last election, their own people who knew as far back as February that the party was built to lose the election took these things that were available. But of course, they knew they were not going to distribute them. They knew straight away. A lot of monies have gone, huge sums of monies. Where did the monies go to? They've kept them. In all the 16 regions, there's one thing I observed. You hardly see the influence of the DC or the MC. And then I tried to ask. And they said, oh, no, you know, under this administration, you don't even hear about them. Look at sanitary conditions across the country, for example. And I always come back to the Western region where they performed the worst on that night, contrary to their own expectations. But the reason is simple. They've literally removed whatever tar you have on all the roads, from Takrady right to Upper Denchira. There was this grand deception that we are actually constructing, 12,000 kilometers of roads. We have an election coming. We must win at all costs, largely because we want to avoid also accountability. So what do?
Why do you think they want to avoid accountability?
Why ever not? The government of Ghana is largely broke,
but
bankrupt.
Whoever wins, government continues. So whoever has committed a crime against the people of Ghana, we say when crime pays, crime multiplies. So whether their own party wins or another party wins, a president would be idiotic not to prosecute those who have harmed the nation.
You know, in this side of the world, right, I take inspiration from the late Professor John Evans Mills, for example. And if you look back on it, he remembered the rancor and acrimony of the takeover between President Kufuor then and himself, and started this theory of a father-for-all approach. So let's end the acrimony, let's end the witch hunt.
I disagreed with that whole father-for-all
And people
approach.
actually
I totally
communicated their disagreement, even
because
now.
what that communicates to Ghanaians is, I can do what I want and get away with impunity.
Thank you. And you see, you look at the numbers that actually keep that morning. You know, 3 days to election day, Saturday, that's when I was actually convinced that we're definitely going to win. I didn't see the level of the margin, no. I think these numbers have literally blown our minds. But I knew. What was the reason? The impunity, the disregard for people's opinion, the disregard for criticism. Even when feedback is positive, it is how they receive it. People were just actually tired of this particular situation.
We have to look at the next video and get your reaction to it. Let's go there.
streets are almost empty. We can't find his voice. And that is why they could not come out to go and do their staffing. And that was far-fetched. That was the only time I've ever seen him. Even I don't know whether he saw me. I don't know whether he saw me. We might have heard that I'm there. That's the only first time I've ever seen one to me. And during all the operations in Kumasi here, the man has gone into hiding.
Oh, the governor of Ashanti.
Oh, he's stuck his tail into his ass and has gone into hiding. We can't find him on the streets. We can't find his voice on the streets. Kumasi Ajubreo is cool. Everything going on smooth. Streets are almost empty. We can't find his voice. And that is why they could not come out to go and do their staffing.
Oh, because of the Jakwa effects?
Well, I wouldn't say Jakwa effects. Because of the whole operation of the NDC in Ashanti region. You don't operate alone. You have so many people playing different roles in Ashanti region here. It's a coordinated effort. I hope you understand. So that coordinated effort, they understood the game. And they now understand that NDC has descended into Ashanti region. The men have come. And we want them to understand that we brought here. And if they misbehave, we'll match them here. And they're checking out. So they couldn't stop the ballot boxes. And all other means that they wanted to use in Reagan, we checkmated them. And that's why you are seeing these results that you are seeing. If you understand the modus operandi of your opponent, be it political opponent, your enemy, your rival, once you understand their mechanism or their modus operandi, you'll be able to...
It looks like this is a game of chess, but some were still playing checkers. You have to understand the modus operandi of your opponent. If not, you lose. You snooze, you lose.
I heard one of the very leading members of the New Patriotic Party tell us very boldly that he's convinced that they've actually never won fair and square. Yes.
Oh, no.
Oh, yes.
Who's this?
Oh, yes, you can check. I don't remember his name, but one of their very leading members said so. You know, I tried the math of the numbers right from 2016 to date. Remember that in 2016, Mr. Akufo-Addo never stopped telling you and I that he won by an overwhelming endorsement of almost 1 million votes. In 4 years, those votes had dwindled down to almost 450,000 votes between the two parties. But we also know that in between the NDC and the MPP, in this duopoly since the inception of the Fourth Republic, it's been just about a little about 400,000 votes between them. So mathematically, something didn't seem quite right. And so look at the trajectory today.
Maybe Ghanaians were cloned.
Well, you know, there are all sorts of explanations. And I keep saying that when you talk about voter suppression, it's not just the threats of what will happen to you when you come out to vote. It's also the things you say and do that will prevent people from coming out to vote. So we have the rigging that is put in place and probably widespread. And don't forget, we have some polling stations, very rural, very quiet. You remember some of our guys having gen sets because lightning is also a problem. By 5 p.m., you know that immediately the whole place is dark. Who knows what happens under the cover of darkness? In 2020, we had done our own very personal investigations and arrived at the conclusion that if we could stem the level of rigging that was nationwide, we could stop this Delta forces and all these thugs that literally were dotted around the country and causing mayhem. If we could prevent what happened in Ayawaso West Wagon, for example, that we stood a chance of winning and winning big. All we did the last 4 years was largely in seriatim, in extenso, and largely because we listened to everybody who knew the level of fraud, the level of dishonor, the level of cheating that was actually going on. Remember that at the run-up to the election, we told they had a two-region strategy. Why would you take for granted the most environment we have in Ghana, which is largely their, biggest support base in Ashanti region? There's 47 constituencies. The largest votes saved for Greater Accra can be found in the Ashanti region. The gentleman they have there, who was actually their party chairman, and I remember Kofi
Did you
Bento.
say gentleman?
Oh, don't worry. Let's assume that he is.
Now, did you say it as a joke or a satire?
Both. So remember Kofi Debi Boko Keke. Kofi Bentil said to us years ago, and that people like Alajete will be turning in their graves because this is not the new patriotic party that they fought for. He was on news file with me. I remember Dr. Nyaho Tamaklu speaking to the founding of what they all loved, and that this was not the party they founded. People should have taken a cue. And so when or gentlemen, like people like Wuntumi, like Abronye, misleading you, making a fool of themselves just because they thought. You see, there's one thing I realized about this last New Patriotic Party administration. They deconstruct our narrative. And then they come back, like Shakespeare says, and tell you that everything that you think is your narrative is generally not the case. But they do worse. And yet they want you to believe that they're doing actually the best that they can. Take, for example, conversations about the electoral process or the Electoral Commission, for example. They took President Mahama to court. They challenged the legitimacy of his win in 2012. For 9 months, we all sat spellbound by this petition. What did we hear months later? That this was a holding way to continue to make President Akufo, then candidate Akufo-Addo, relevant to the New Patriotic Party. So, of course, if his vice president is number 2...
And those were words from the horse's own mouth?
Absolutely. 2 now wants to be president. You think he's going to dismantle those structures? No. He definitely was not Akufo-Addo.
So it is you, the politicians, that are actually the bane of our society. Because when power is handed to people, they forget their humanity. They only believe in their authority, and they bend structures of state to their will. Right or wrong?
Wrong. In all of that, it depends on the leader. I have watched John Mahama.
But that leader is also a politician.
But you see, even in our politics, humanity first. Look at all the great leaders that you know. Look at Lee Kuan Yew. He will tell you that discipline for him was important, that faith for him was important, and that of all the faiths that he had studied when he was a student in Oxford, the best for him was Confucianism, because it preached what? Discipline, modesty, integrity, all the values that he believed would underpin or underscore a leader's of engagement with his people.
Are these values you see and speak of in H.E. John Mahama because you work with him and for him?
You know, H.E. John Mahama is a very modest human being. I say time and time again that in his modesty also is his deep thought process. You know, there's one thing I love about H.E. John Mahama. He would pick up your thoughts all the time. You will be surprised at the sort of valued conversations we can all have with him at any given time. But you see, in all of that, he's very best spokesperson.
And when he disagrees, what does he do?
And when he disagrees, oh my goodness, he will dig very deep into his experience. You'll be surprised. I was spokesperson before. I was this before. I remember this happening in Parliament. I remember this when I was member of Parliament for Boland.
Let me remind you, he started as an assemblyman.
I'm telling you. And that
rose
man,
to become member of Parliament.
That man has something
and then
very
rose
unique.
to become a deputy minister.
Oh, yes.
And then from there
Absolutely.
became...
Oh, yes.
And then from there, president.
Yes, and then the president again. Think about it. But you know, in all of this, let's never forget the impact of God in the life of a man.
If I have one thing to say about him, it's the fact that even when I have disagreed with him in the past, I have noticed that even in disagreement, he's never disagreeable.
Never. But you heard, I mean, in the last few weeks, I don't know where they've all appeared from, about how much he listens, how much he values feedback, how much he takes people's opinions seriously, and all of that.
And the people who have insulted him.
This one started a long time ago, but you know something? I also believe in all humility, that is just what our democracy needs. You see, it's good to be this very jingoistic person, this very macho-like leader, but I think yesterday I watched him at his church when he went for the family Thanksgiving. They had started over the years really to hand out these on some occasions at church on his birthday, and what have you. And his wife, Madame Lodina, will insist that they do it themselves. It is on those occasions they don't even expect us as staffers to assist them. They will stand there in all humility and do it till they are done. It actually left something in my mind yesterday, that no matter what we do, spirituality is important. And when you read his book, My First Coup d'etat, he tells you a story about somebody who told his father, when he was a young John Dramani, that this son of yours would be a gift to Ghana, that he never forgot. I think it is also that resilience that actually conveyed. I remember, you know, early on, I don't think it was actually his intention even to contest again. At least around 2017, 2018, I think he had taken such a lashing that I'm not sure that he thought, for any reason, that he will contest again.
I'm going to bring the conversation back to the woman in you, Mr. President, but I can't help but also commend his wife, Lodina.
Oh, yes.
In fact, she gave me the biggest hug I've had this year. When she met me on an occasion, hugged me so deeply and looked me in my face and says, "Hey, Nana minim sa o ye krache boko boko na minim se uwa kukudro sa unsro." And I said, and then she hugged me again, and I will never forget that. You know, that's without knowing me to be a member of any party, for her to even embrace me like that meant a lot to me.
And you know, many of our political opponents speak to this. I remember there was an occasion when we were traveling to Tamale, for example. The then a Greek minister was on the flight with us. And when we were trying to board, she walked up and said, "OJB, wait, let my uncle board first." And I thought, "Who is your uncle?" You know, this Greek minister now, I said, it was one of those ones that, you know, when you meet him, you just want to walk past very quickly. You know, but it actually spoke to, as we all call her, Mommy. You know, she's just very stoic. And I would not look at Mommy even from their days when, you know, she became like second lady or first lady. I'll take it to all those years ago as a member of Parliament's wife. I think she set the tone of how our leaders' spouses should actually reach from within themselves in their support, not just of the leaders we know, but of course even of their families. Because remember, it is not easy to keep your family grounded when your whole life is actually within this public glare. A generous opprobrium, sometimes a lot of love, sometimes a lot of hate. Imagine what life was like in the aftermath of Oman leaving office. To think that he had a woman like her. And you know, to give her all the credit, I don't think she wanted any of this. I think at some point she just wanted them to retire very peacefully and quietly. And she made that very, very obvious. And you remember the story from Professor Mills's day. We walked all the way to the castle, very well dressed, to go and beg Professor Mills to leave her husband so they could go home and have their peace. You know, she's that kind of woman. And I must confess that Mommy's level of humility will always be the subject of enormous conversation.
I have another video that I want you to react to. Let's take a look at it.
We are in the midst of the largest wealth transfer in history right at this very moment. So $100 trillion of wealth.
And classfmonline.com. Your affiliate stations are who in which you're Ghana have baby or Sabekaye.
About 1 minute. Some say who about to know Susanswa. Koswa full of Class Media Group. Your election strong group.
Hello, Ghana. My name is Dakwa, Kwesi Dakwa, and I'm delighted to tell you a beautiful story. For every young person in Ghana looking to work in radio, television, or online, this is a great opportunity for you. Welcome to Class Media Group. Class Media Group, with 1 TV station, 9 radio stations throughout the country, and 1 great online portal, is taking on new hires as interns. Interns to shadow great personalities and train for a job and career ahead. All you have to do about making an impact on people, because whether they have a husband or whether they are alone in raising children, women must always be there for the young ones. I must say, good men play their part, but some may walk, and then the women have to do it all. So listening to this and the kind of wealth that's now going to go through the hands of women, what plans does your boss have for women in Ghana?
You know, I look at my boss, okay, and I think he derives enormous inspiration from his wife, who was herself an entrepreneur, you know, a woman. He was not interested in any of these intellectual, political sorts of things, but a very hard-working woman. And you know, every time I watch Her Excellency Madame Lordina Mahama, I see my own mother from many years ago, who juggled literally her career and everything else and raised this army of children. I mean, in her day, to have 6 kids was no joke. You understand? But I look at this woman, thrust into this very public space, but look at her impact over the years. Very quietly, very stoically, never in your face. But at each turn, watch John Mahama's interaction with women, for example. I mean, at the time when he picked me up to serve him, I mean, I didn't have any experience. I probably was the least known operative even in politics, apart from communicating for the party and probably making light years of it. I don't think that I was the most experienced in that space. But I'm sure somehow he thought that maybe George, and that it would actually bring some inspiration to many other women out there. But then remember the nomination of Professor Nana Jane Opoku-Agyeman. And this, I think, humbles me more than any other thing that Mr. Mahama has ever done, beyond running his own very beautiful family, led, of course, by Ma Lodi, as Dr. Sawyer calls her. But it is also in the history of Jane Nana Opoku-Agyeman. So Ghana will actually, in the next few weeks, receive her very first female vice president. Absolutely. And then take it from there. What do you think this progressive ticket means for all the women out there? And you see, I also say that on the cusp of making history is also the enormity of the responsibility. 56.55% of the good people of have endorsed this ticket. We only want a 50+1. And we thought that maybe anything above that would be a blessing. But this is like showers of blessing raining on this ticket. It also means that there is enormous responsibility on the shoulders of this ticket. And Professor Jane Nana must make it count. That women must see that difference that she brings to the ticket. For the first time, something interesting has happened also in the NDC, in the number of women parliamentary candidates that we fielded and who have won the elections to enter parliament. So of that 180, I don't know what the numbers are yet, but we are doing very, very well for the women's constituency, this all-important demographic. And you can see my excitement when I speak to this demographic. When I walk through the stalls of the United Kingdom, for example, there's an inscription I love: women-led, women-owned. And then I come back to Ghana and I see the whole concept of this Women's Development Bank, knowing very well that the other women's bank, Women's International Bank, didn't do quite so well. But I look at the private sector of Ghana. I look at the media circuit, the number of media houses led by women, the number of banking institutions led by women, the number of public universities led by women. It tells you there is a certain revolution that is taking place. So one of Mr. Mahama's biggest legacies will not be in the number of women entering parliament as members of parliament on the side of the NDC, but it's also because of the historic nature of this ticket. Why? We used to be South-South, North-South, South, Muslim Christian. Then we had a few of our smaller parties go for the man and woman. For the first time, a really large political, the real alternative goes out there for an accomplished woman, not because of everything, but her gravitas and what she brings to the ticket.
the fact of women's liberation, which is good for the world, the fact of the nurturing of women, the nourishment of the family of women, the stability of the family by women, of course with the support of men. But looking at your own family and your children, are you the type of woman that prepares the road for her child or prepares her child for the road?
Oh, that's complex. I think like my parents before me, I'm preparing my children for the road. It's best to do that. And I'll say with all humility, that's my son turns 18.
What's his name again?
Camille Mogtari.
Camille Mogtari.
Former senior prefect.
Happy birthday, Camille Mogtari.
A former senior prefect of Roman Ridge School.
I need to add that, right?
Yes.
Because that may lead to presidency one day.
I don't know
So
about
happy
that.
birthday, Camille Mogtari. I leave you with love, respect. I pray for long life in love and vitality, wisdom and dignity, beauty and sincerity, peace and prosperity for you and all who love you.
How do you know that? In all his 18 years, you know what I consider as the best thing I do on each of his birthdays? I lay my hands on him and I pray for God's grace upon his life. I think there's only one thing that the parents can do for their child is to pray and bless their children.
And remember that we are mere shepherds, we are not engineers.
All the time. And every other parent whose child, daughter or son has taken Camille into their fold will come back and ask, could you do it? Sensitive, mature beyond his years, a very well balanced child. That gifted as he is, I never take it for granted that I must prepare him for the road ahead.
Prepare your child for the road.
Very important.
Not the road for the child.
No.
And for that, I have a message for those politicians who feel a need to plunder the resources of state for their children. If you prepare your child for the road, there will be no need to prepare the road for your child.
You know, I look at my dad all these years ago. I mean, Daddy worked in Liman's government, okay? He worked for Jerry Rawlings for a very long time. Okay, Kiddy, when Daddy died, he only had 3 properties to his name. Nothing special to write him about. But there's one thing he used to tell us, that I will invest in only one thing, your discipline and your education. Because if I succeed in that, the rest will be easy. So I look at this it is raised. I have a sister who's a doctor, I have one in insurance, one who's a banker, one who's an investment person in IT, a brother who's an entrepreneur and a farmer. I mean, I'm a lawyer. My sister is a banker. You know, I look at all of us.
Your father didn't have to steal national resources.
Because he didn't even know how to steal. And he didn't think it was even that important. And Daddy never actually believed that money would actually save a child. And he never stopped telling us that. I think in many ways, believe
Your father didn't have to do the unethical.
No.
Your father did not have to do conflict of interest.
Maybe you should ask your guys to do some research even on him. You'll find out very interesting tales about him. And I'm lucky enough that Professor Alabi is one of his lasting students and still talks about him when he meets me. Alhaji Hudu Yaya is another. President Mahama himself will speak about my father. We were, you know, looking back on it, life wasn't even that special, you know. We thought we were very privileged. I think our kids are even more privileged.
My last question to you. For those who are doubting Thomas is still, will say, well, if he was that good, why did Ghanaians vote him out? And those same who have now endured the past 80 years, who said, oh, he must be better, let's bring him back. What do you say to them?
You know, to know John Mahama is to understand what drives him. I always say that Mr. Mahama is a very compassionate human being. For those of us who work very closely to him, it's not every day you walk in and Mr. Mahama or remember, oh, how's your son or daughter? You understand? But you remember if he did something wrong, or if he said something that didn't quite get there, or if he had a need to correct you about one thing or the other. But the best part about Mr. Mahama is when you walk in and there's a bad headline, there's screaming headlines. Say, look, calm down. That's politics for you. But look at it this way and take it from me. This is what I know for a fact, and this is what works.
Will his government be honest and selfless and provident?
You know, serving John Mahama is a way that you learn to imbibe him. If I decide to grant an interview, I'll ask myself, how would the boss respond to this question? How would he relate? I mean, look at the way we run this campaign. Nobody led it like John Mahama. The sleepless nights, the countless debates, the level of support that he gave to the many campaign teams we had, the refreshing voices that came on board, the very young and youthful people who received all the support they could get. I mean, I don't think that we ever actually had this level of support really from the leadership of this party. But it's also in the fact that he will sit and allow you to be short of the guidance every now and then. But you know, he's also his own man. And I think Ghanaians probably realized something. And someone said it even better. The Mahama's nature of leadership was something Ghanaians were not used to live and let live. It is why he could absorb all that criticism and still go to a book launch by Manasseh and buy a book at that auction. That speaks to his testament and his hope in our democracy.
That is a mark of statesmanship.
Absolutely.
And that is a mark of humanity.
But a mark of humanity. And funny enough, this week, my reading list is a book titled Humanity. Why I chose it, I don't know. But it also speaks to the existential threat of what is lacking in our politics for the next few years.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Joyce Bawah Mogtari. They say it is lonely at the top. Of course, it must be for those who are arrogant, selfish, and greedy. Kind and compassionate, you will always have good company. See you at the top. The bottom is too crowded. My name is Dakwa, Kwesi Che Dakwa. Thank you for joining us on Master of the Game. See you next time.